Ferdinand Magellan was born on 1480 and died in April 27, 1521 in Mactan, Philippines. Magellan was the first to sail from Western Europe to Asia. He set out from Spain in 1519 with a fleet of 5 ships to discover a western sea route to the Spice Island. En route, he discovered what is now known as the Strait of Magellan. And here, Magellan became the first European to cross the Pacific Ocean.
I will discuss about Antonio Pigafetta, or also known as Antonio Lombardo Pigafetta. Was born in a wealthy Vicenza family. Antonio is the eldest child, and in his youth, he studied astronomy, geography, cartography, and especially about the navigation. And Pigafetta, he served as Magellan's assistant. On April 1521, he was wounded at the battle in Mactan, wherein Magellan was killed. Then, 18 men out of 240 and Pigafetta, who joined the voyage with Magellan, returned to Spain. After that, and after the battle, they were accompanied by Juan Sebastian Elcano on board of the Victoria. These men who survived completed the first circumnavigation of the world, and Pigafetta died on 1531 at Vicenza Republic of Venice at the age of 40 to 50 years old. Pigafetta's surviving journal was the source about Magellan and Elcano's voyage. One warship of the Italian Navy was named after Pigafetta's in 1931.
Spanish fleet, Armada de Molucca. The first voyage around the world by Antonio Pigafetta was written on board one of the 5 ships that was first to circumnavigate the world during an expedition that was led by the Portuguese explorer Ferdinand Magellan, and after his death during the voyage by Juan Sebastian Elcano. The navigator Ferdinand Magellan, or called in Spanish Fernando de Magallanes, 38-year-old Portuguese when started the fleet, first European to cross the Pacific Ocean. Pigafetta presented his book to high personages. The original journal was said to be lost and it was not clear on what language it was written. An account of the voyage survives in 4 manuscript versions, 1 in Italian and 3 in French. The ships. The government of Spain provided 5 ships for the Magellan expedition. Ferdinand Magellan led the 5 Spanish ships and 237 men in what was to become the first voyage around the world. The names of the ships were the Trinidad, the San Antonio, the Concepcion, the Santiago, and the Victoria. The Santiago, under command of Juan Serrano, crew 32, smallest of the 5 ships, called as a caravel, the first ship that has been lost. San Antonio, under the command of Juan de Cartagena, crew 60, soon led by Alvarado de Mesquita, the largest in the fleet, sailed back to Spain, the second ship that has been lost. Concepcion, under the command of Gaspar de Quesada, crew 45, captain was executed because of a mutiny. Bird, the third ship that has been lost. Trinidad, under the command of Ferdinand Magellan, the flagship, crew 55, was attacked by a Portuguese ship. Left shipwrecked, the fourth ship that has been lost. And the last one, Victoria, under the command of Luis Mendoza, crew 45, soon led by Juan Sebastian Elcano, the ship where Antonio Pigafetta was on board, the first ship that circumnavigate the world, the only ship to complete the voyage. On September 8, 1522, the crew of the Victoria cast anchor in the waters of Seville, Spain, having just completed the first circumnavigation of the world. On board was Antonio Pigafetta, a young Italian nobleman who had joined the expedition 3 years before and served as an assistant to the Ferdinand Magellan en route to the Molucca Islands. Magellan was dead, the rest of the fleet was gone, the Santiago shipwrecked, the San Antonio overtaken, the Concepcion burned, and the Trinidad abandoned. Of the 37 sailors who had departed from Seville, 18 returned on the Victoria. Pigafetta had managed to survive along with his journal. Notes that detail the discovery of the western route to the Moluccas. And along the way, new land, new peoples on the far side of the Pacific, the fleet had stumbled across the Marianas Archipelago and some 300 leagues farther west, the Philippines. On March 16, 1521, Magellan and his team arrived in the islands of Philippines, or what they called as Islands of Ladroni, riding the ship Victoria. They first reached the island of Zamal, that now it called Samar. There came some natives giving signs of joy for the presence of the crew of Magellan. The native Filipinos did welcome the foreigners warmly, as they described by Pigafetta. They exhibit great signs of pleasure at seeing us. Magellan succeeded over his plan to influence the fate of people in the island he had conquered, including ours. The native Filipinos have their own idols before and a god which they called Abba, but they threw this belief away as they embraced Christianity, which was introduced by Magellan. The first Mass in our country happened on the last of March, and the first cross was then set up in Mazua, or called Limasawa, as they wished by Magellan for the benefits of the natives. Magellan and his crew went to Zubu, or Cebu, on April 7. Upon hearing good reports from the king of Mazua, they are not immediately warmly welcomed, for they are asked to pay tribute, but Magellan refused to do so. There were negotiations through Natari where the king of Zubu asked for a drop of their lands as a sign of their friendship. Both agreed. On Zubu, the captain's power to influence the fate of people worked. 500 men were baptized before they held a mass, including the leaders of the islands.
The relevance to the world. Number 1, his circumnavigation proved that the world is round. Number 2, this book aids the researchers and students of today in understanding the context of the Magellan expedition and how the whole Euro-Philippines conflict commenced. Number 3, Spaniards introduced Christianity to the Filipinos. What is the relevance or contribution of the Philippines history? The importance of having knowledge of the first voyage of Magellan around the world allowed Philippine historians to know more about the people, places, cultures, and tradition of the Philippines. During 1521, Antonio Pigafetta gave an account of the people in the Philippines in 1521 and the manner and person responsible for the killing of Ferdinand Magellan, the tribes and the ruler of the island where they have stayed. What are the author's main arguments? The author saw Filipino during that period as inferior to them, especially as the author and his fellow voyagers have Eurocentric view on the world, even thought he saw themselves as superior. He still appreciated and the culture and friendship of the kings of the island.